Welcome, everyone. Today we will explore the origins of Islam. This video is designed for educational purposes, aiming to enhance our understanding of history, culture, and one of the world's most significant religions, followed by over 1 billion people today. Every major story has a starting point, and Islam is no different. It emerged in a particular place and time, within a land of diverse tribes, deep-rooted customs, and varied beliefs. In this series, we will trace Islam's beginnings, its growth, and its expansion across the globe. We will discuss the key figures, the challenges they faced, the pivotal events, and the powerful moments that defined this history. As you listen to this narrative in clear, simple English, you will also have the opportunity to improve your listening comprehension. This content is strictly educational, presenting the historical story of Islam with respect and objectivity. We honor all religions and beliefs. So, get comfortable and let's journey back in time, over 1400 years. To truly understand Islam, we must first look at the world into which it was born. Our journey begins in the Arabian Peninsula, a vast, arid region situated at the crossroads of Asia, Africa, and Europe. Today, this area includes nations like Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, and the UAE. However, over 14 centuries ago, Arabia was a very different place. The landscape was dominated by a harsh, dry desert with scarce water sources. This environment shaped the lives of its inhabitants. Many people were nomads, known as Bedouins, constantly migrating with their herds of camels and goats in search of pasture and water. Society was structured around tribes, which were essentially large extended family units. Loyalty to one's tribe was the highest virtue. Tribes offered protection and support to their members, but this fierce loyalty also led to frequent conflicts and wars, often lasting for generations over seemingly minor disputes. In the heart of this desert lay the influential city of Mecca. Mecca's power did not stem from agriculture or military might, but from commerce and religion. It was a vital hub on major trade routes connecting Africa, Asia, and the Mediterranean. Merchants from distant lands converged there, making it a bustling center where goods, ideas, and cultures mixed. Mecca's religious significance centered on the Kaaba, an ancient cube-shaped building. Tradition holds that it was originally constructed by the prophet Abraham and his son Ishmael as a sanctuary dedicated to the worship of one God. Over the centuries, however, the religious practices of the Arabs had changed. The majority had adopted polytheism, placing hundreds of idols inside and around the Kaaba, representing various gods and spirits. Tribes from across Arabia would make pilgrimages to Mecca to venerate these idols, solidifying the city's status as both a religious and commercial center. The powerful Quraysh tribe were the custodians of the Kaaba and the rulers of Mecca. Life in pre-Islamic Arabia had its virtues and its deep flaws. The people valued hospitality, courage, poetry, and tribal allegiance. A traveler seeking shelter would be welcomed and protected. However, serious social injustices were rampant. Tribal divisions were absolute, and a person's worth was often determined by their lineage rather than their character. The wealthy exploited the poor, slavery was widespread, and women had limited rights. In some tribes, the birth of a daughter was seen as a misfortune, and historical sources indicate that female infanticide was tragically practiced in some instances, driven by fear of poverty or shame. Religious beliefs were a mix of polytheism, animism, and small communities of monotheists. Jewish and Christian groups lived on the fringes of Arabia, and there were individuals known as Hanifs who rejected idol worship and sought the original faith of Abraham. So the concept of one God was present, but it was not the dominant belief. Historians often describe this era as a time when Arabia was spiritually searching, grappling with moral challenges amidst strong traditions. The world around it was changing, with powerful empires like Byzantium and Persia dominating neighboring lands. And in the midst of this complex society, in the city of Mecca, a child was about to be born, who would irrevocably alter the course of history.
Around the year 570 CE, a momentous event occurred in Mecca. A child was born who would become one of history's most influential figures. His name was Muhammad. The year of his birth was remembered by tradition as the Year of the Elephant. In that year, a ruler from Yemen named Abraha marched on Mecca with a grand army, including war elephants, intending to destroy the Kaaba and divert pilgrims to a cathedral he had built in his own land. As the army approached Mecca, tradition holds that a miraculous event occurred. Flocks of birds appeared, raining down small stones on the invaders, forcing them to retreat in disarray. It was within this remarkable year that Muhammad was born. Muhammad was born into the respected Quraysh tribe, specifically into the Banu Hashim clan. Though his family held honor, they were not wealthy. His father, Abdullah, died before Muhammad was born, leaving him an orphan from his father's side from the very start. This early hardship would profoundly shape his character. Following the custom of Meccan families, the infant Muhammad was sent to live with a Bedouin woman named Halima in the desert. The desert life was considered healthier and would instill in him the pure Arabic language and resilience. He spent several years with Halima's family, and traditional stories speak of blessings that came to her household during his time there.
After returning to his mother, Amina, tragedy struck again. When Muhammad was about 6, his mother passed away during a journey. Now an orphan from both parents, he was taken in by his loving grandfather, Abdul Muttalib. This comfort was short-lived, as his grandfather also died 2 years later. At the age of 8, having lost his father, mother, and grandfather, Muhammad came under the care of his uncle, Abu Talib. Although a man of honor and kindness, Abu Talib was not wealthy and had a large family to support. Muhammad grew up in this household, learning responsibility, hard work, and patience. As a boy, he worked as a shepherd, a job that taught him to be observant, calm, and thoughtful, qualities that would serve him well in the future. As Muhammad matured, the people of Mecca recognized his exceptional character. He was known for his honesty, integrity, and trustworthiness in all his dealings. In a society built on trade, these qualities were invaluable. He earned the nickname Al-Amin, meaning the trustworthy one. Even his later opponents acknowledged his unimpeachable honesty. In his youth, Muhammad accompanied his uncle on trade caravans to places like Syria. These journeys exposed him to different cultures, religions like Christianity and Judaism, and the workings of larger civilizations, broadening his perspective on the world. At the age of 25, his life took a significant turn. A wealthy and respected Meccan businesswoman named Khadija needed a trustworthy agent to manage her trade. Muhammad's reputation for honesty led her to hire him. He conducted her business with such skill and integrity that Khadija was deeply impressed. She proposed marriage to him, and despite being older, their union became a model of love, respect, and mutual support. Their partnership would prove crucial, as Khadija would become the first believer in his message. They had several children and built a stable, peaceful family life. Despite his comfortable life as a merchant and family man, Muhammad was troubled by the social ills he saw around him: tribal conflict, injustice towards the poor, and the worship of idols. He frequently sought solitude for reflection. He would retreat to a cave called Hira on a mountain near Mecca, known as Jabal al-Nur, Mountain of Light. There he would spend days and nights in contemplation, seeking truth and understanding.
It was in this quiet cave that an extraordinary event was about to unfold, an event that would change his life and the world forever. Muhammad was not seeking fame or power. He was on a personal quest for truth. Troubled by the inequalities and idolatry of Meccan society, he regularly retreated to the solitude of Cave Hira on the Mountain of Light to pray and reflect. He was around 40 years old when, during one of these retreats, something unprecedented occurred.
According to Islamic tradition, the angel Gabriel appeared to him. The angel commanded him, read or recite. Muhammad, who was unlettered and could not read, replied, I cannot read. The angel embraced him tightly and repeated the command twice more, and each time Muhammad gave the same response. Finally, the angel revealed the first words of what would become the Quran. Read, in the name of your Lord, who has created all that exists, has created man from a clot, a piece of thick coagulated blood. Read, and your Lord is the most generous. This moment, known as the first revelation, marked the commencement of his prophethood and the beginning of Islam. Overwhelmed and terrified by this experience, Muhammad rushed home to his wife, Khadijah. He was trembling and asked her to cover him. He recounted everything that had happened, fearing for his sanity. Khadijah, without hesitation, comforted and reassured him. She affirmed his excellent character, his honesty, his kindness to the poor and helpless, and declared that God would never let such a person be deceived. She became the first person to believe in his message and his mission. Her unwavering support was his anchor in those early, uncertain days. Khadijah then consulted her cousin, Waraka ibn Nawfal, a learned man familiar with Jewish and Christian scriptures. After hearing Muhammad's account, Waraka confirmed that the visitor was the same angel Gabriel who had brought God's revelation to prophets like Moses. He declared Muhammad the chosen prophet for his people, but also warned him that he would face rejection and hostility, just as previous prophets had. The core of the message Muhammad began to share was beautifully simple, yet profoundly challenging. There is only one God, Allah in Arabic. He called on people to abandon the worship of idols and submit wholly to the one and only Creator. This central belief was accompanied by a strong moral code. Help the poor, be honest in business, treat others justly, care for orphans, and renounce cruelty and injustice. These teachings directly challenged the established order and the profitable idolatry of Mecca. Initially, the message was shared privately with those closest to him. The first believers were his wife, Khadijah, his young cousin and ward, Ali, his close friend and respected merchant, Abu Bakr, and his freed slave, Zayd. These individuals formed the first tiny Muslim community. The word Islam means submission to the will of God, and a follower is a Muslim. After some time, Muhammad was instructed to begin preaching openly. He started speaking to the people of Mecca about one God and righteous living. Some listened with interest and accepted the faith. However, many, particularly the leaders of the Quraysh, reacted with anger and fear. Their authority, prestige, and economic interests were tied to the Kaaba's idols and the pilgrim trade. They saw Muhammad's message as a direct threat to their way of life and their power. Initially, opposition took the form of mockery and ridicule. They called him a madman or a poet. They accused him of inventing stories. But as the number of Muslims slowly grew, the opposition escalated into persecution. The early Muslims, especially the poor, the weak, and the enslaved who lacked powerful tribal protection, became targets of harsh treatment. They were beaten, imprisoned, and subjected to extreme forms of torture to force them to renounce their faith. Yet the small community persevered, their faith tested but not broken. The situation in Mecca was becoming increasingly untenable, and the time for a new chapter was approaching. As the message of Islam spread, the Quraysh elite's anxiety turned into active persecution. The small community of believers, drawn from various social strata,
faced increasing hostility. While those with powerful family connections had some protection, the most vulnerable members endured brutal treatment. The story of Bilal, an enslaved man, exemplifies this suffering. When his master discovered his faith, he forced Bilal to lie on the scorching desert sand under a heavy rock, demanding he renounce Islam. Bilal's only response was to whisper, "Ahad, Ahad, one God, one God." He was eventually freed after being purchased by Abu Bakr. The Quraysh leaders also tried to silence Muhammad directly, offering him immense wealth, leadership, and power if he would stop preaching. His famous refusal was clear. Even if they placed the sun in his right hand and the moon in his left, he would not abandon his mission. Faced with this unwavering commitment, the persecution intensified. To protect his followers, Muhammad advised some of them to seek refuge elsewhere. A group of Muslims migrated across the Red Sea to the Christian kingdom of Abyssinia, modern-day Ethiopia. Its ruler, the Negus, was known for his justice and granted them asylum, allowing them to practice their faith in peace. This was the first migration in Islamic history. Back in Mecca, the Quraysh imposed a brutal social and economic boycott on Muhammad's clan, the Banu Hashim, who continued to protect him. For nearly 3 years, they were ostracized, unable to trade or marry with other clans, forced to live in a mountain valley outside Mecca, facing severe shortages of food and water. It was a time of immense hardship, but the community remained steadfast. Eventually, some members of the Quraysh, moved by the injustice, worked to end the boycott.
Shortly after this period, Muhammad suffered 2 devastating personal losses within the same year. His beloved wife, Khadijah, his pillar of strength and first believer, passed away. Soon after, his uncle and protector, Abu Talib, also died. With Abu Talib's death, Muhammad lost his tribal protection, leaving him more vulnerable to his enemies in Mecca. This year is remembered as the Year of Sorrow. Seeking a new audience and potential supporters, Muhammad traveled to the nearby city of Taif. He hoped its people might be more receptive. Instead, he was met with brutal rejection. The city's leaders mocked him, and the mob chased him out of town, pelting him with stones until he bled. It was one of the most painful and humiliating moments of his life. Yet, in his despair, he did not curse them, but prayed for their eventual guidance. Around this time, a glimmer of hope appeared from an unexpected direction. During the pilgrimage season in Mecca, Muhammad met a small group of men from the city of Yathrib, a fertile oasis north of Mecca, plagued by years of internal tribal conflict. They heard his message of peace, justice, and unity under one God, and were deeply impressed. They saw in him a potential leader who could reconcile their warring tribes. They accepted Islam and returned to Yathrib as believers. The next year, a larger group came, pledged their allegiance to Muhammad, and invited him and his followers to come to their city, offering them protection. Muhammad instructed his followers in Mecca to begin migrating secretly to Yathrib. In small groups, they slipped away, leaving behind their homes and possessions. Finally, after most had left, Muhammad and his closest companion, Abu Bakr, prepared to depart. Aware of the plan, the Quraysh plotted to assassinate him. They surrounded his house, but he and Abu Bakr escaped through a back window and hid for 3 days in a cave outside the city. A famous story tells of a spider weaving its web and a bird nesting at the cave's entrance, leading their pursuers to believe the cave was undisturbed and pass by. After the danger passed, they completed their perilous journey.
When they arrived in Yathrib, the people welcomed them with overwhelming joy. The city was soon renamed Madinat an-Nabi, the city of the Prophet, or simply Medina. This pivotal migration, known as the Hijra, marks a major turning point. It was not just a physical journey, but the transition of the Muslim community from a powerless, persecuted minority to the founders of a new, independent society. The Islamic calendar begins with this event. In Medina, the Muslim community, or Ummah, was finally able to live and practice its faith freely. The residents who had welcomed the migrants were called the Ansar, the helpers. Muhammad's first crucial act was to foster bonds of brotherhood between the Ansar and the Muhajirun, the migrants from Mecca. He paired individuals, creating a system of mutual support that transcended tribal ties and solidified the community's unity. The first structure built in Medina was a simple mosque. Constructed from palm trunks, mud bricks, and a roof of palm fronds, it served as the spiritual and social heart of the community. It was a place for prayer, learning, meeting, and discussing community affairs. It symbolized the new society they were building together. Medina was a diverse city, home to Muslims, polytheistic Arabs, and 3 major Jewish tribes. Muhammad established a groundbreaking charter, often called the Constitution of Medina. This document formally outlined the rights and duties of all citizens, regardless of their faith. It declared all groups to be one community, Ummah, guaranteed religious freedom for Jews, and established principles of mutual protection and conflict resolution. It was a pioneering example of a multi-religious society governed by a written agreement.
Despite the peace in Medina, the conflict with the Quraysh in Mecca was far from over. The Meccans, furious at the Muslims' escape and the growing power of their community, continued their hostility. This led to a series of military confrontations. The first major battle was at Bed, where a small, ill-equipped Muslim force faced a much larger and better-armed Meccan army. Against all odds, the Muslims achieved a decisive victory, which was seen as a divine confirmation of their cause and a huge boost to their morale. However, the following year, the Meccans sought revenge. At the Battle of Uhud, the Muslim army initially had the upper hand, but a strategic mistake by a group of Muslim archers allowed the Meccan cavalry to turn the tide, resulting in significant Muslim losses. The Prophet himself was injured. This setback was a profound lesson in discipline, humility, and the importance of following leadership. The conflict continued, with the Meccans laying siege to Medina in the Battle of the Trench. The Muslims, on the advice of a Persian companion named Salman al-Farsi, dug a trench around the city, a tactic unknown in Arabia. The trench thwarted the Meccan cavalry, and after a weeks-long siege, the Confederate army, plagued by dissent and harsh weather, withdrew. This marked a strategic shift. The balance of power was beginning to tip.
A few years later, Muhammad had a dream of performing the pilgrimage to Mecca. He led a large group of unarmed followers towards the city for a peaceful pilgrimage, Umrah. They were halted at the outskirts by the Meccans. After tense negotiations, both sides agreed to the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. The terms seemed unfavorable to the Muslims at first. They would have to turn back that year, and a 10-year truce was established. However, this treaty proved to be a masterstroke of diplomacy. The period of peace allowed for the free exchange of ideas. People could travel and talk without the threat of war. In the 2 years following the treaty, more people embraced Islam than in the previous 2 decades. The peace was eventually broken when Meccan allies attacked a tribe allied with the Muslims. With the treaty violated, Muhammad marched on Mecca with a large but unarmed force of followers. The city, seeing the immense size and peaceful intent of the approaching multitude, surrendered without a battle. This was the conquest of Mecca, achieved with minimal bloodshed. Muhammad's first act was to declare a general amnesty for his former enemies. He then went to the Kaaba, cleared it of all idols, and rededicated it to the worship of the one God. This act of forgiveness and the peaceful restoration of the Kaaba's original purpose was a defining moment. Following this event, delegations from all over Arabia flocked to Mecca, and tribes began embracing Islam in large numbers, inspired by the message and the growing strength of the community. The once persecuted community in Mecca had grown into a force that united much of Arabia. The final chapter of the Prophet's life was marked by consolidation, reflection, and a final, powerful message.
About 10 years after the Hijrah, Muhammad performed his first and only Hajj, the major pilgrimage, since the migration. He was accompanied by over 100,000 Muslims from across the peninsula. On the plain of Arafat, he delivered his famous farewell sermon. This address was a comprehensive summary of Islamic ethics. He emphasized the sanctity of life and property, condemned usury and all forms of injustice, and proclaimed the equality of all people. All mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab has any superiority over an Arab. Also, a white has no superiority over a black, nor a black has any superiority over a white, except by piety and good action. He urged kind treatment of women and reminded them of their mutual rights and responsibilities. He concluded by asking the congregation if he had delivered the message, and they affirmed it. This sermon encapsulated the core values of justice, equality, and compassion that Islam sought to establish. Shortly after returning to Medina from the pilgrimage, Muhammad fell ill. He continued to lead the community in prayers as long as he was able. In 632 CE, at the age of 63, Prophet Muhammad passed away in the home of his wife Aisha. The news was met with profound shock and grief. Umar ibn al-Khattab, one of his closest companions, was so distraught that he refused to believe it, declaring that the Prophet could not be dead. It was Abu Bakr who calmed the community with his famous words, "If anyone worships Muhammad, then Muhammad is dead. But if anyone worships God, then God is ever living and never dies." This reminder redirected the community's focus to the eternal and unending nature of God. The Prophet's death created a leadership vacuum. After consultation, the Muslim community chose Abu Bakr as their leader, the first caliph, successor. Under the leadership of Abu Bakr and the subsequent caliphs, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, the Islamic State expanded rapidly. Within decades, Muslim rule extended from the Iberian Peninsula in the west to the Indus River Valley in the east. This expansion wasn't just political. It fostered the development of a magnificent civilization. Centers of learning like Baghdad, Cordoba, and Cairo became hubs of intellectual activity. Scholars in the Islamic world made groundbreaking advancements in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, chemistry, philosophy, and geography. They preserved and built upon the knowledge of ancient Greece, Persia, and India, which would later fuel the European Renaissance. At the heart of this civilization was the Quran, the central religious text of Islam, believed by Muslims to be the literal word of God revealed to Muhammad. It provides guidance on all aspects of life, from worship and law to personal conduct and social justice. Alongside the Quran, the teachings and practices of the Prophet, known as the Sunnah, serve as a model for Muslims. The core practices of Islam are summarized in the 5 pillars. Shahada, faith, the declaration of faith, there is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. Salah, prayer, performing the 5 daily ritual prayers. Zakat, alms, giving a portion of one's wealth to charity and the needy. Psalm, fasting, fasting during the month of Ramadan. Hajj, pilgrimage, making the pilgrimage to Mecca at least once in a lifetime if able. Today, Islam is the world's second largest religion, with over 1 billion followers, known as Muslims, living in nearly every country across the globe. Their cultures and languages are diverse, but they are connected by shared beliefs and a common heritage. The story of Islam is far more than a sequence of historical events. It is a profound narrative of faith emerging from quiet contemplation, of resilience in the face of immense persecution, and of the transformative power of a message centered on justice and the oneness of God. It began with one man seeking truth in a cave and unfolded into a civilization that shaped world history. For millions today, this history is not just a record of the past, it is the foundation of their spiritual identity and a continuing source of guidance. The story of Islam is a testament to how a single, powerful idea can travel across centuries and continents, continuing to inspire and shape the lives of people around the world.